Welcome to Leadership DNA, a podcast for those who aspire to be a better leader. Alongside Arturo Gomez, I'm Rob Cressy. Today's topic, are your hands dirty enough? And Arturo, when you sent this over to me, it put a smile on my face because it resonated so much with me in my mindset, in my philosophy for the ways that I lead. Can you dive a little bit deeper into sort of why you wanted to talk about this?
Well, I think it's something that's super top of mind for me right now, and I think it's probably very top of mind for a lot of leaders right now. Just the circumstances and the world we're living in right now is causing a lot of people to you're either going to sink or swim, and so part of that swim mentality is to make sure that you're working, probably harder than you ever have, and working smarter than you ever have, and some of that requires some real visibility into the business and real visibility into your team, and I think that a lot of people just don't understand that if they're not working in the trenches, if they're not at the ground level, that they're not going to really get the perception of the business that's required. I mean, so everybody, there's a lot of leaders and a lot of people that are sorry, I got some action in the background, but a lot of leaders right now, I think, are starting to realize that this 30,000 foot view is potentially fantasy. You can fly over a war-torn country and it can look beautiful, and so you need to be on the ground, and you need to take moments to actually spend time on the ground so that you actually really understand what's going on. And so I think that right now in this environment where the world is causing a lot of businesses to have to shift and to evolve, I mean, again, we're staring down the barrel of this this pandemic that's coming back, and it's already influencing a lot of things, certainly in the businesses that I have. And I think really globally across the board, it's a topic of conversation. And so right now there is no playbook for entrepreneurs and leaders. And so the fastest, quickest thing that I think provides solutions, one, to provide some comfort to the team, and also to give you visibility into your business, is to make sure that your hands are dirty. You got to get to work.
And there's three things that I just wrote down as you were saying this that highlights the importance of getting your hands dirty. Number one, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, empathy. One thing that I always like to do as a leader, I never ask someone to do something that I have never done before, because I understand what it's like to be in that position. And of course, that's not an absolute, but it's pretty close to it in terms of the things that you understand or that you're willing to do. And then number two is, with the way that the world and entrepreneurship and business has changed, so many people want to rest on their laurels, the way that things have always been done. And sometimes we can get high up on our perch where we've got our team doing everything, we're delegating everything. And by design, you know what? I've outgrown getting my hands dirty. I'm now to the point where I'm sitting in this royal throne where I feel like I've deserved to be in the position where I am. And that is a mindset you cannot have, because the number three thing is growth. If we want to grow right now, you need to be willing to do everything you can in your power to grow, including getting your hands dirty and doing the things that others aren't willing to do. Because the thing that I love about this, if we think about competition, is the person who's competing with you willing to do the things that gets their hands dirty? And I would like to say the majority of people are not willing to do that, even business owners. So this time right now is going to weed out of a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of businesses who say, you know what, I'm going to make an excuse for why things are not moving forward in my business, as opposed to saying, as a leader, I'm willing to get my hands dirty. And if I got to go to the ground level, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of draws on the grit piece. I think the biggest thing is it's not people that they're not willing to, they're not afraid of the time commitment. I think they're just afraid of what it feels like to be, quote unquote, human again, and what it feels like to do things that, hey, I haven't done that in 20 years. Well, it's, if you really want to survive, you're going to do things that make you uncomfortable. And we talked about that in, in previous episodes, and kind of forcing yourself to do things that make you uncomfortable, to kind of strengthen yourself a little bit. But, I think you're going to get some real visibility. You see things differently when you're on the ground, and you hear things that you may not hear from other methods, in terms of, distancing yourself from the business. I think you also make a real impact. I mean, smart leaders and smart entrepreneurs are evaluating the business on a daily basis and making, quick decisions. I mean, in the world that I live in, hospitality, aviation, and some marketing aspects, if you're not making moves on a daily basis, then you're kind of you potentially putting yourself at real risk. And so it's a constant tweak. And so if you're able to really understand what's going on, then you have a greater capacity to make an impact. The other thing is that the shift, you're able to, again, you can shift and you increase agility by being present. And then last, I mean, you're going to build some real trust. Trust is a real important factor in any business. And I think that, the people that we're leading and the people that we're employing, they're not necessarily seeing the world differently. They're reading the headlines, they're seeing the concern, they're seeing issues within the business. And if they don't think that their leader or the person that's driving the business is going to be driving them in the right direction, you're going to have some real challenges with retention and some other issues.
And I think this is something that is so important for culture. And we're talking about this now, given everything going on in the world, but I believe this is almost an absolute in general, in good times and bad times, because if your team can see you as a leader being willing to get your hands dirty or to be there. I love what you said about having your boots on the ground, because the things you can hear and see in the communication, because so often we're fighting for these little inches as business owners of things that we can improve. And communication and listening are two of the things that we can do on the ground level to say, hey, what can be done to fix a problem that you're having? Or you may not realize something if you're not down on that level because you're sitting so high up on the perch.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I think this is applicable to people that are living in the digital world right now. There's some businesses that are completely remote, and I think my experiences and some of these analogies are drawn into from having brick and mortar and having kind of physical presence and interaction with my employees. But I think that there's certainly, to me, it's about being active. Are you active enough? Are you asking the right questions? Are you doing the right research? Are you supporting in a way that would be more of a teammate role rather than a boss role? And so these are things that I think are really transferable, really across all platforms and across all businesses. You just have to be an active leader and supportive in a way that's going to move the business forward, culture forward, and allow you to actually make decisions on behalf of the business that are swift.
I'm curious your thoughts on how you can help lead your team to have them get their hands dirty as well, because certainly you can lead by example and do it. But let's talk about, not everybody may necessarily be willing or interested in doing it. How can we build this culture to say, listen, everyone now wants to get should want to get their hands dirty on this. So as leaders, we take ownership of absolutely everything, but not everybody's willing to get comfortable. So what suggestions do you have for leading your team to help them get comfortable with getting their hands dirty?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts first with obviously the lead by example component. I mean, that really is going to have a strong impact on culture. I mean, you're going to really see things transform in a very nice kind of progressive way when people are seeing, the boss, the leader, the guy that they, look up to or don't, but seeing this individual active in the business and doing things that, maybe this person shouldn't be doing. But I think that's a real critical piece. The other thing I think that leaders should understand is that not everybody is going to conform. And that's another reason why you have to have your hands dirty. The life or the success of the business is going to be dependent on the output. And so if there are people, kind of the assessment of that individual and that individual's work output aside, you got to do whatever it takes to make sure that the business is successful. So if that person's not pulling their weight in this immediate instance, sometimes it takes an individual to get themselves involved and make sure that it goes across the finish line. And so, and a lot of those times end up being breakthrough moments for those potential individuals that just are, that are falling behind. They see somebody that, they find it, that there's empathy involved there, that there's care involved, that there's humility involved, and certainly that there's, I think, energy and zeal towards getting something done. I mean, that's, people can gravitate towards those things.
Arturo, I'm curious from your perspective, being in the hospitality side of things. So often now when we look around, we're seeing a lot of help wanted signs where it's actually hard to get people to want to go back to work. Nonetheless, saying, all right, now that you're back at work, we're also going to be looking to have you do more or get your hands dirty. And I'm curious if you can share any insight from your perspective that might be able to help others around this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a critical thing. I mean, it's happening nationally, and it's not even just happening in hospitality. I think we're seeing a labor shortage really across multiple industries. But I think transparency, on the front end, certainly the conversations that I'm having with people as we're trying to onboard them or even interview them is really just painting the picture of this is who we are, this is what it's like, and making sure that we can provide them with as much information on the front end so they can make their decisions, because I think it's important. I think it's important to bring people on the team immediately, especially in some of these critical periods that have somewhat bought in, that have somewhat bought into at least what and you have to be honest. You can't be painting a picture that doesn't exist. I mean, you have to show them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and say, here's who we are, and here's what we do. It's almost like a marriage, right? You got to be really transparent with each other in order for it to work. But I think the other thing, again, retention, people, what I've started to see is that we've had some real contributors, some team contributors that are bringing others to the fold. And so that happens when people feel safe. That happens when people feel like their voices are being heard. That happens when people are seeing success. It's rare that people are recruiting other people to a sinking ship. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And so, a lot of these factors of getting to work, getting your hands dirty, and joining in with the team is something that I would recommend that everybody obviously do. One, for the success of their business, but two, for the culture that it brings. But at the core of it, I think it's transparency is what people are asking for and what they really want. The other thing is, I mean, you got to be competitive. There's a whole conversation of where we land with wages and how we create environments that are I think exciting and attractive for people. And so but culture is a big thing.
One thing I'm seeing in my coaching business that seems to be prevalent across the board is actually a lack of culture right now. So as it relates to hiring, you're bringing people on, because there can be a shortage of help or so many things going on where revenue goes down. So now the people who are in leadership are focusing on other things, and culture is the thing that is starting to really fall down for a lot of companies. And it's a super slippery slope, because I was talking to a friend of mine, I ran in on the street, and at one point a year ago, he was really focusing on culture and building it up in his company. So I was excited to talk to him about it. And I was like, dude, how's the stuff with the culture going? And he's like, honestly, our culture is toxic right now. And I was like, whoa, what happened? And he's like, I just don't have the time right now to invest in the building of the culture, because we're also bringing on so many people at once. And I heard this and it crushed my heart, because he didn't have a system and process for how to duplicate the culture to allow them to onboard the right amount of people. And I'm seeing this a lot because whether you're working remotely or sort of a little in office, a little out of office, if you're not investing or doubling down on culture right now, you're seeing a lot of turnover. And that's what's happening in his company and a lot of others, that people are leaving jobs that they liked because they realized the culture of where they were is not what they dream of having. And if a company isn't quick to address, or one, identify it, but then two, address it, they're going to keep having this turnover. And no company wants to have this churn of employees because their culture is toxic when they don't they realize, but they're not doing anything about fixing the culture.
Yeah, I mean, people are talking about the great resignation. So many people are just putting in their notice, and they're, whatever they're going to do. I think people are understanding different levels of freedoms right now. But, to me, cultures is, I mean, what is it at the end of the day? Is it a person? Is it a set of values? Is it, I think that the idea of culture, I think, is coming into question right now in a big capacity because, excuse me, people are questioning, hey, we're not in the office, so we're lacking culture. I think it's a really interesting subject because, again, it's if you're hiring the wrong people right out of the gate, I think that you're never going to have the environment or the workforce that you really want. So I think that there needs to be emphasis really on the front end. But then, as much time as I've spent over the years really trying to emphasize hiring in the way that we hire, we've also made some bad hires, and it just happens. And so that's just the nature of the beast. I think anybody that feels helpless right now needs to really kind of reprioritize where they're spending their time. And again, sometimes it requires, you moving off this, taking a step out of the white ivory tower and getting down on the ground and getting your hands dirty. It's unfortunately, again, it's some people are very uncomfortable with doing things that are perceived beneath them. And when you're if you're a CEO of a huge publicly traded company, you've got people to answer to, and so you've got to make some changes, and you got to create results. If not, you're going to be replaced. I think it's the same for small business though too. I think you have whether it's you got to answer to your mortgage payment, your car payment, or some other form of pressure that's sitting on top of you. I think people just need to give it a shot. If you're feeling some real interesting pressures in your business, I think you need to ask yourself, are you involved enough where you're, because I also still subscribe to, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Unfortunately, I'm a big fan of delegating, and I'm a big fan of trust and how you develop other people underneath you. But if you're feeling that things aren't getting done the right way, then excuse my French, but you better get your ass in there and get it done.
Well, yeah, and I love what you said, because I would think, number one, I'm going to do it myself. Number two, I'm going to create the system and process. And then number three, I'm going to delegate it, because now I've got the perspective of what can be done to duplicate that result. So let's get to the action item or the takeaway. And Arturo, my favorite thing you said happened at the end of this episode. You said reprioritize where you are spending your time. And I feel like this is so important, both in culture as well as getting your hands dirty, because so many people may be used to spending their time at something higher level, when right now what is necessary is getting your hands dirty. What about you? What's your action item or takeaway from today?
I mean, I think, people need to understand that there needs to be a balance of working on the business and working in the business, and so what I mean by that is that I think it's critical. I think it's important that people actually spend time really, strategizing, forecasting, looking at the future, and, evaluating the business even in its real time. How did we perform yesterday? How did we perform last month? The other thing is that's important is for people to work in the business. And that means to work with your team at all, different levels. And, I forgot the name of the show, but you have this show, it's where CEOs come in and they disguise themselves and they come and they work the forklift for a couple of days in this huge factory or whatever. And they see things that they've never ever seen before. And so I think it's critical to take kind of the lead of the premise of that show and everything that we've discussed in this episode, that people need to spend time working on their business, but they also need to spend time working in their business.
Absolutely love it. And we want to hear from you. How does this concept of "are your hands dirty enough" resonating with you? Is this something that you're applying to your business on a day-to-day basis? Arturo, where can everybody connect with you?
Best place is going to be on LinkedIn, Arturo Gomez LinkedIn.
And on my end, you can hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram at Rob Cressy. You can also head to robcressy.com. I've got a ton of resources around leadership, brand building, and personal development.